Hi, folks. This is Emily Sollenberger, Program Director for Art Services speaking, and I'm joined by my co-program director, Laura Weiss. Today, we are going to be walking through the FY27 Grants for Organizations staff conversation portion of the GFO process. We'll just note at the top here that there was a revision for the GFO program this past year. So there have been some shifts and changes within the GFO cycle, some of the requirements for the GFO program. So we just wanted to take the time to walk through what that will look like given some of those shifts and changes within the revision. So just starting with an overview of the staff conversation. Again, this is a new part of the GFO review process. Program directors, so Laura and myself, we will be conducting these in-depth conversations as a required part of the application review process. This is going to happen every 4 years for our organizations within the cycle that you are set up within. However, if you do happen to be put into a 1-year application cycle, we will also let you know if things change for you. Additionally, all new organizations coming into the GFO program for the first time, or perhaps you were lapsed in funding for a year or two and you're coming back to the program, you will also complete this component of the GFO process in this current fiscal year 27 cycle. We'll also note that, again, the staff conversation is a new component of this process. It has not happened before. However, it is replacing what was the former in-depth conversation extension assignment that was completed by panelists in the past. So if you've been in this program for a while, perhaps you're familiar with it. This is a shift in this requirement from panelists to the staff, and some slightly different criteria. So staff conversations will take place between January and April of 2026. So you have about a 4-month period of time that you'll have to set up these conversations with Laura or myself. We will share what we're calling a sign-up link to schedule your staff conversation. You can expect this within the upcoming weeks. Probably by the end of December, we will send this information out for you to schedule your required meeting time. So again, it is the responsibility of you as the applicant organization to schedule your required meeting time within that sign-up link. We are going to primarily be offering these meeting slots Thursdays and Fridays from late January through early April. So again, staff members will also offer some select few evening hours for organizations that are all volunteer-led or perhaps don't have the availability during daytime meeting schedules. We typically work 8 to 4, so that's where we'll primarily focus, but we will obviously work with you and your schedule to make sure that everybody has time available to schedule this particular staff conversation when required. So when you're thinking about scheduling your staff conversation and who should attend, we're really recommending that you're selecting no more than 3 representatives from your organization to participate in the conversation. Some folks to think about when you're scheduling this to invite to this particular conversation would be, your executive or managing director, perhaps an artistic director, maybe a member from your development team or the grant writer that might be familiar with the application, a board president or somebody else from board leadership, a financial director, a GM, board treasurer that could speak to financials. Again, just really thinking about folks that would be able to answer a variety of questions or thinking about strategic direction, financials, and programming, those sorts of things. So any questions about who you should bring to this staff conversation, again, reach out to us, but just as a starting point, just focus on no more than 3 folks. And then moving along to the structure of this meeting, it is really going to be structured. It's going to feel structured. Because we are keeping the conversations with each organization to no more than 30 minutes. They're going to take place virtually. So in order for us to complete all of the 110 plus conversations that will need to occur during this time, Laura and I really need to stick to a time limit. So we've determined that, starting off this year, 30 minutes seems to be enough. So during that time constraints, we really recommend that you prepare your responses in advance to ensure that we get all the necessary information during that meeting. So keeping in mind, focus on the task at hand when we're in these meetings together. We also ask that you be sure that everybody is on time, so we're not wasting time and getting off schedule just during that 30-minute time slot that we have together. Additionally, just to ensure that this is an equitable process, we will focus on the same questions for all of the organizations that are going through the staff conversation. So it will be scripted to a particular extent. And Laura and myself, depending on who's leading your staff conversation, we will be taking notes during that conversation to assist in our own reporting during that time. All right, so I think I'm going to hand it over to Laura to go into a little bit more depth here.
Great, thanks so much, Emily, and hello, everyone. So we're very excited to talk with everyone during these staff conversations. And just so you can prepare for them in advance, like Emily was talking about, we wanted to make sure that we share the questions that we will be asking, so that way you can have notes or whatever preparation in advance when you're coming into these conversations. So during your conversation, you're going to be asked a couple of specific questions. The first will be, tell us about your organizational structure and how the structure ensures your organization is serving your mission and artistic programming. So that's really thinking about, the structure of the board and the staff, volunteers, etc., and how they are working within your organization to ensure that you are meeting your mission and your artistic programming. You'll be asked, based on the updates or the highlights shared in your written application, to share some further information about these. So, we might reference a specific update or highlight that you shared within that application, and we might ask for updates since the submission of the application, next steps for the organization about that highlight or that update, plans that maybe have changed or evolved since you submitted the written application, things like that. You'll also be asked, based on the goals shared in the written application, to share further about the progress the organization has made on the identified goals in the application. So similar thing here, where we will reference the goals that you shared within that application. And we're just looking to see, you shared a timeline within the written application. So we might ask, where you are in comparison to that timeline. Just looking for updates so that we understand the progress that you are making towards those specific goals. And then lastly, of the kind of four major kind of scripted questions, is thinking about your organization's current or planned programming. Share about how the programming is reflective of the community the organization serves, how programming choices may challenge dominant norms or standards, and or how the organization is evaluating its programming as part of its creative process. So if you're familiar with the former GFO application, you might notice some similarities here to some of the questions that we had asked prior in the written application. But this is just an opportunity to share verbally during this conversation a little bit more about these topics and about how they are a part of your creative process. And then to wrap up the conversation, we will give an opportunity for you to see if there is anything the organization would like us to know about. So that might include other successes or challenges, questions, suggestions that you might have for us for professional development or other learning opportunities. Anything basically that you feel that you would like us to know about. There will be some space at the end of the conversation for that. And then lastly, if we have any additional follow-up questions related to the written application or perhaps the financials that are a part of the written application, then we may ask specific questions about that at the end of the conversation if needed. So that's the entirety of the conversation itself. Again, like Emily said, these are 30 minutes. So just keep all of that into consideration as you are preparing and thinking about how you are sharing answers to those questions. So as Emily shared, there is a new GFO cycle. So just to go through that quickly with you, we have expanded to, in the previous GFO program, it was a 3-year cycle. We have expanded to a 4-year cycle that is a rotating schedule. So you'll see here on the screen kind of what might happen in the different years. Since you are listening to this as somebody who is participating in a staff conversation this year, you would be likely falling into that year 3, or you are a new organization. And then that means that you would cycle through from there, next year being year 4, and then back up to year 1, 2, 3, etc. Like Emily said earlier, all new organizations, so if you did not receive GFO funding in FY26, all new organizations will complete both the artistic activity visit and the staff conversation in this first review cycle. Following that, if you are approved for funding, you would then fall into the schedule per your artistic discipline. And just so you can see the full schedule here on the next slide, you'll see highlighted in yellow, that's the grouping that is required to submit the application and the staff conversation for this year. So that's going to be our literary arts organizations, multidiscipline group 1, and theater group 2. So multidiscipline and theater, these are large artistic disciplines. So they have been split into groups 1 and groups 2. That is primarily done alphabetically. It's not determining anything other than that. It's just a split, so that way we don't have everybody in that artistic discipline in one year. We just needed to split it up a little bit. So you'll see who's doing the staff conversations, and then you can see the other components in the different parts of the cycle here on the screen. If you're not sure about your artistic discipline assignment, there's a couple ways to double check that. So first, if you are an existing GFO organization, meaning that you received GFO funding in the past, we did send that information via email in about mid-September. So you might search for an email either from myself or from Emily that has that information in it. Or you can simply log into Smart Simple and go to your FY27 GFO application. If you click on the organization information tab of the application, you'll find that there is some kind of preloaded information, including your discipline assignment, your application cycle. So it will say that you have the staff conversation. It also lists your program director and some other information in there. So you can always reference that. But of course, if you can't locate it, or you have questions or concerns about any of that, make sure you reach out to us so we can make sure you know exactly the steps you need to take for the rest of this process this year. So just to wrap us up here, just a quick overview of the GFO timeline so you kind of know where we are in the process. As you probably remember, the GFO process starts in the fall. So we had the intent to apply applications in the early part of the fall for new organizations, and then the application opened in early October. You submitted your GFO application by November the 15th. Now here highlighted in red is kind of the next milestone, and that is that period from January through April, where Emily and myself are reviewing your written applications and your financials, and then public panelists and staff are completing those assigned site visits and in-depth conversations with the assigned organizations. Following that, once we move into the late spring and early summer, the recommendations for funding are made to the council by myself and Emily. We determine the grant amounts based on our budget. We use our funding formula to determine those. And then once we officially move into the new fiscal year after July 1st, that's when notifications for FY27 GFO grants are sent via Smart Simple. Those usually occur usually about mid to late July. So you can expect to see that information over the summertime. And then just a reminder, August 15th is always the deadline for GFO final reports. So if you received FY26 funding, your final report will be due on August the 15th. And just a reminder that final reports from the previous fiscal year, they have to be approved before the FY27 disbursement can be processed. So that's how the full process works there. And then if you are, of course, approved for FY27 funding, your final report then will be due August 15th of the following year. And then ongoing, just a reminder that we're always here to answer questions, to provide any kind of support that you need throughout this process. Feel free to reach out to us at any time. And here's our emails in case you are not familiar with them or you don't have them in your inbox. And then just a final note here that this is a new process for everyone, for applicants, for us, for panelists, everything. So, we really welcome any feedback along the way, anything that you feel is positive, anything that you feel could be improved. We're certainly open to hearing all of that, and we hope to take that feedback into consideration then as we move into the FY28 process and we continue to refine our application, our visits, our conversations, all of the pieces of the process. So please, if you have any feedback, feel free to reach out to us at any point, and we very much appreciate that. And I think that is everything we have for you today. So we look forward to talking with you during your staff conversations, and you can look forward to receiving your scheduling information in the coming weeks. Thanks so much.